Hi everybody, thank you for joining me for another episode of A Palette for Love Live. Tonight we're going to be talking about addiction and the various ways to treat addiction, to address it and identify it as what it is. And I'm also going to be making beef short rib tacos. So for the short ribs, I had to start cooking this about 3 hours ago, and I'll upload the videos now of that process, and then I'll take the short ribs out of the oven, so that you can see what it looks like, and then we'll assemble the taco. So these are the vegetables I'm going to be braising the short rib with. There's garlic, 3 kinds of onion, yellow, shallots, red onion, carrots, and celery. I'm also going to be using some tomato paste and rosemary, thyme, and bay leaves. And then I'm going to be deglazing the pan with this red wine that I think we've had before, but I can't remember. And I'm also going to throw in some of this bone broth that I just realized is flavored with jalapeno, so we'll see how that goes. These are my beautiful bone-in short rib. All this marbling here is going to be really good flavor. I wanted boneless, but they didn't have it, so you gotta work with what you got. The most important thing when talking about addiction is to have an idea of how this person's behavior has happened over time. A lot of people think that addicts are, the extremes that you might see on TV or in the movies where they're uncontrollable, their urges are really strong, and they have an intense drive chasing the next high, whether it's substance abuse, alcoholism, gambling, whatever else. And yes, those people do, of course, exist, but most often there are addicts who are functional addicts. They're people that you would never think or know they had an addiction or a problem unless you knew them intimately. What do I mean by functional addict? That's someone who can conduct their life as normally as possible without the addiction or the habit really causing anything that's on the surface destructive. So they can hold on a job. They're most likely married with children. Their friends and family would probably never know. But their habits, what they do to pursue their addiction, what they do to achieve it, is one of the hallmarks of them being an addict. So I have my pan here with some avocado oil. And I'm probably going to have to do these one at a time because they're a little bit long. And my Dutch oven is only, I think, I don't know how big it is, maybe 8 quarts or so. So here we are getting some nice color on the short ribs. I was able to put 2 of them in there, and I have 1 more to go. And then we're going to throw in the veggies and get those sauteed in the animal fat. Okay, so it's all done, and now I'm going to throw in, without burning myself, the onion, and I'm going to put in the carrots and celery as well. Everything just saute and soften. And so that's smelling really, really, really good in here. Maybe I'll throw in some salt just to sweat the onions out. And then I'll put the other things in. I kept the veggies big and chunky because I'm going to be braising the short ribs for a few hours, and I didn't want them to totally disappear and disintegrate. I probably should have cut the carrots a little bit more, but as they cook, they'll soften. So I have the tomato paste in there, and I'm just going to cook that out a little bit. And I'm thinking I definitely needed a bigger pot. Maybe I'll transfer everything before putting it in the oven to braise. Okay, I threw in the aromatics, thyme, bay leaves, rosemary. And I turned it up just a little bit so I can get things sticky in order to deglaze all that flavor from the bottom of the pan. I think one of the easiest ways to identify if someone is an addict or not without any formal training or certification in addiction is to find out whether or not this person can stop the habit if they wanted to, whenever they wanted to. They may, of course, tell you, yes, I have it under control. I can stop drinking whenever I want. I don't have to use the drug. I don't have to go to the casino. But if they truly were able to stop, then they wouldn't need to pursue this habit or this behavior as frequently, as intensely, or at such a cost that they do. So there's a difference between abuse and addiction. You can abuse something without being addicted to it. You can abuse alcohol, you can abuse drugs, which means possibly, in some cases, whenever you use it, you overdo it. Whenever you are gambling or drinking, you can't just have one or two. You have to go to the extent of blacking out. You have to go to the extent of losing all your money or spending days at a time at the casino. That doesn't necessarily mean you have an addiction, because there can be some lapse in between the usage. There can be some lapse in between the visits to the casino. You can have those benders or those binges that don't necessarily mean you have an addiction. They can mean you have an addiction, but there's a difference between abuse and addiction. Addicts have a need that has to be fulfilled regardless of what the cost is. And most often addicts don't feel like they are powerless to whatever they're addicted to. They have this false sense of security and pride that they're in control, and that whenever they want to, if they wanted to, because they never do, they can stop doing and using whatever it is they're addicted to. Here's the one. Scrape up all that brown flavor from the bottom and sides of the pan. And now I'll add in the bone broth, maybe just about half the jar. I want to save some for the winter or maybe other recipes. And I don't need all of it anyway. The whole point of braising is to have the meat sitting in some liquid that will then be infused into the meat as it cooks over time. So it's going to be in the oven for a few hours, and then we will arrange the tacos. My short ribs in the braising liquid have my veggies and my herbs, spices all around. This is going to be in a 350-degree oven for a few hours, and then I will show you the unveiling and how soft the meat is, how tender it is, how much it falls off the bone, and you're going to want some. But it's only for me and Dante and Silver today. You should definitely make this though. It's very, very good. So what do you do if you think someone in your life is an addict? I think what you should do is first try to gather as much information as possible about what you think their addiction is. So you want to give them resources, but you also want to have information about what you've seen as far as their habits and their behaviors before you confront them. So if you can say, 6 months ago you were doing X, Y, and Z, but now you're doing this, I think that gives them a pretty good idea of what you think the changes are. If you can say, 3 months ago when we went out to dinner, you had one drink, now you're having a bottle of wine every night, that's a pretty good picture to paint of how things have changed. That's a little bit drastic, of course, in my example, but my point is, you don't want to just come at them and say, I think you're an addict, because I think that would make anybody defensive. What you want to do is have some data, some details to say, here's how you've changed. Here's what I think you're doing differently now. Here's where I think this behavior has increased or intensified. And even then, they may still be resistant, but if you give them some, information about therapists or substance abuse clinics or other addiction behavioral health clinics, that could possibly get them at least thinking about it, and that may spark the interest to at least go and prove you wrong, or at least go and find out, am I an addict and just didn't know it? So here is the big reveal of the short ribs. As you can see, the bones are coming out already. A lot of the liquid has evaporated, and hopefully it's sucked up into the meat, making it nice and tender. And now I'm going to shred it and make some tacos. Just to show you how tender these are. Look at that. The bone comes right out. Not really much pulling. throwing them in the sink. Ta-da! Of course, when somebody that you love is going through addiction and hopefully getting treatment for their addiction, you want to be as supportive as possible. That means you want to try to understand what they're going through. You want to maybe go to Al-Anon meetings, for them and for yourself. And you also want to have limits and boundaries with how much you're willing to support, because it can be draining on you just as much as it's hard for them. Most often when a person gets treatment for their addiction and they come back to their families, there's a big shift, and it's a negative one most times because you've gotten so used to operating around this person as the addict that when they become sober, you have to get used to them all over again, and you have to get to know them all over again. So just remember that it's going to be a process. It's not going to be easy. And if you need to, you can always get individual therapy for yourself so that you can be as helpful and loving towards them as possible, and so that you can be okay too while supporting them through this process. So here's the finished product of my braised beef short rib tacos. I put some green apple on the bottom, goat cheese on top, a little squeeze of lime, some diced pickled jalapenos, and parsley. I hope to see you again next Sunday on A Palette for Love Live, where I'll be cooking something that I don't know what it is yet, and we'll be talking about another mental health topic. Thank you. Bye.